Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we're going to be covering the Lies of P stats. Now we're going to be doing a bunch of number crunching, going to figure out which stats to level up, how many points to put into those particular stats, the soft caps, the hard caps, all of those wonderful things. Now, the formula is going to be different than the FromSoft formula in terms of the soft caps and hard caps, so definitely keep that in mind. But one thing that they do very similar to From Software is that they don't explain shit. Like literally nothing. They don't care to explain any of the soft caps, how much percentage our buffs get as well, which is very annoying, especially in a game where you have RNG damage. Like, why don't you explain how much percentage certain types of buffs give? But you know, that's for a separate conversation. But starting off with the vitality stats, this stat governs your HP and your guard regain. But starting off with your HP itself, basically on screen right now is how much you benefit of leveling the vitality stat itself. Now, if you're unsure as to what's going on, I'll explain it right now. Now, the left side of the numbers, these are actually going to determine how much vitality you have, and the right side is basically telling you how much HP that you gain when you're leveling up to that particular stat. So, for example, when you go from 10 to 11 vitality, you gain plus 20 to your health. When you go from 11 to 12, it'll give you another plus 20. When you go from 12 to 13 vitality, you only get plus 18 to your health. Now, this trend is basically every single 2 levels, you actually end up getting decreased to 1 HP every single time, and this trend kind of continues all the way to about 30 vitality, to where it kind of levels out a little bit. As you can see, from 30 to 35 vitality, you only end up getting about plus 10 or plus 9 to your health itself, and between 36 and 40 vitality, you only end up getting plus 8, and then beyond that, it will end up just degrading and trying to stay around about that same area. But once you get to like about 100, you're only going to get about plus 2 or plus 3 for every single point. Now, I have beaten the game multiple times, and my recommendation will be just to go to 30 to 35 vitality. That'll be perfectly fine to carry throughout the majority of the game. So once you get to roughly about endgame, definitely be at that amount. Once you go to New Game Plus, honestly, good luck. Everything hits so hard there. It feels like it's New Game Plus 7. I thoroughly despise it, even if you have like maxed out defenses and the best defense amulets. Even at 50 vitality, things just still two-shot you, and it's just disgusting. So good luck in that regard. But as for your guard regain, if you don't know what that is, it's a mechanic of which when you block, you'll take partial damage, and some of that partial damage can be converted to more health when you do damage. And the amount of health you actually can regain back will be based on your guard regain stat. Now, looking at the numbers themselves, they're going to be very similar to your HP gains in that they deteriorate over time, but between 20 or 10 to 20 vitality, you gain about 5 to 6 to your guard regain, and once you get later down the road, it's just going to fall off a whole bunch. Now, I did test out when I didn't actually have a weapon equipped. If you do have a weapon equipped, I think your numbers would be a little bit different. But either way, if you go to about 30 to 35 vitality, you end up getting around about that 50% mark in terms of your guard regain, which is perfectly fine, because there are ways via your P organ that you actually can improve this as well via different types of things. So it's not really that big of a deal to begin with. So just go to about 30 to 35 on your first playthrough either way. But definitely HP is going to be the most important part of your vitality stat. Now, as for the Vigor, this stat actually does determine how much stamina that you do have. Now, between 5 and 8, every single level will actually end up giving you plus 6 to your stamina bar. Between 9 and 11 will give you plus 5, and 12 and 15 will give you plus 4. And basically on your first playthrough, that's where you pretty much want to stay at anyway, because past that point, one, you're not going to get much returns, and your stamina bar is actually pretty forgiving in this game. And also, there are stats via your P organ, or some perks via your P organ, or which can actually decrease stamina consumption for certain types of attacks. So you actually can go spec into those, and in that way you can actually just save putting points into Vigor and put them into other things instead. Because as you can see by the chart, once you get to like 30 to 40 Vigor, you're not going to really experience much of a benefit. Once you get past 47, there will be times where you just level up and actually not gain any benefit at all. Now, your Vigor, just like every other stat, does actually boost your defenses as well. However, Vigor just does it the worst for some reason. What I've noticed is when I've been leveling up the other stats, everything else just does it better than Vigor. I'm not too sure why the Vigor stat was just the least important, but compared to things like Motivity, your Vitality, your Capacity, all of those things just gave you more defenses, so there's not really going to be much of a benefit to level your Vigor up that high, so I'd stay around about 15 or to 20 and you'll be perfectly fine. Now, getting into the capacity stat, this stat actually does govern your equipment load and your Legion bar. Now, getting into the equipment load, it's just amazing. It's perfect. Every single stat gives you plus 3 to your equipment load, and it doesn't matter how many levels you put into it. There's no fall off. It's just a flat plus 3 almost every single time. Sometimes it actually differs by like 0.1 or 0.2, but it's still roughly plus 3 every single time, which is just amazing. Now, in terms of what I actually recommend, In terms early on, I wouldn't level up this stat much because the heavier stuff you tend to get later in the game in terms of your defenses, but I definitely recommend going to about 15 to 20 capacity just to have enough so you can actually put on the heavier types of defenses, because it can be the difference between like 20 or 30% damage negation, which honestly can be more important than your health. So leveling up this stat does actually serve a great benefit. And also if you actually have larger weapons equipped as well, you want to actually level up this stat just so you can actually stay below the minimum load. Actually, to stay below 80%, because being at slightly heavier load isn't actually going to be much of a difference compared to being below 60%. Only difference will be some stamina consumption, which in most cases isn't actually that big of a deal. But if you did have a problem with stamina consumption, then definitely stay below 60%. But me personally, I actually stay below 80% because I'd rather have those bit in defenses to actually tank more attacks than have that little bit of stamina recovery speed. But as for your Legion bar, if you don't know what that is, it basically determines how much you actually can use your Legion prosthetic arm in terms of how much attacks you actually can get off. And every single stat in capacity also gives you +3 to your Legion, which is just amazing. It's great. So I wouldn't really focus leveling up the capacity if you actually wanted to spam your Legion arm over and over again, because it's not really going to be the most consistent way to actually do damage in this game. And your Legions can be pretty expensive sometimes, so the difference between having like 3 or 4 more points into this stat isn't going to really benefit much in terms of how many more attacks you can get with your Legion. So I wouldn't really focus too much on that, but it is actually a benefit. So I would just mainly focus on this stat in terms of its weight limit. Now, as for your Motivity, Technique, and Advance, these are going to be your damaging stats, of which they will boost the damage of your weapons, Legion arms, or throwable objects, obviously dependent on what type of scalings that these weapons do have. So for instance, if you have a weapon of what actually has an A scaling in Motivity, you're going to benefit a lot more of going into that Motivity stat. Now, the way that I did test this out, I grabbed 3 different weapons that have A scalings, one for Motivity, Technique, and Advance, and I just recorded the damage values, and they were all pretty much the exact same. Obviously, one A scaling might be different to a next A scaling, but I'm just going to show you the damage values of what I got with a +10 A scaling Motivity weapon. Now, between 10 to 18 Motivity, every single level would give you either +6 or +7 to your damage in your weapon. Between 19 and 23 Motivity, you get about +6. 24 to 26, you end up getting +5. So yeah, basically at this point, it's going to be very similar to your Vitality. I would just recommend going to about 30 to 35. So level it up the exact same way that you would actually level up your Vitality, because once you get past that point, unfortunately, you're just not going to gain much of a benefit. It's kind of upsetting between the levels of 40 to 60 with an A scaling weapon, you only gain like 20 to 30 different points in AR, which is very upsetting, especially in a game where everything hits super duper hard and has a lot of health, especially in New Game Plus. The game just does not really feel that fun. I just wish you could just do way more damage. I wish the soft caps were a lot higher, because it'd just be a lot nicer to just fuck shit up. In this game, you can't really pick out one particular weapon and just cheese through the entire game, which is upsetting. I like to make broken ass builds, and there's plenty of build variety in this game, but there's not much that you can really do in terms of like making a broken ass build. But for the most part, it's still pretty decent. Now, one thing I actually forgot to get into is that your advanced stat kind of works a bit different than the other stats in terms of your damage negation. Every single other stat actually does boost your damage negation, except for advance. It boosts your elemental damage negation by a little bit, but doesn't actually touch that physical damage negation at all. But the trade-off being is that it actually gives you resistance to your status effects. So things like your shock, your break, your electric shock, things like that, it would actually give you more resistance to those types of things. So if you actually have an advanced type of build, I would actually recommend picking out your defenses that actually boost more of your defense types and not really worry much about your status effects, being that the advanced stat already covers those things as well. Also, one other thing that advanced does do is actually boost your Legion bar. So very similar to your capacity stat, this actually does boost how much you actually can use your Legion arm. Now, every single stat in advance actually boosted by 1.5. So basically think of it as in every single odd number is going to boost it by 1, and every single even number will give you +2 to that Legion stat. Now, this is going to be basically half as effective as leveling up your capacity stat in terms of boosting your Legion, but obviously you do benefit of leveling up this stat as well in terms of boosting your Legion, which is nice, but I wouldn't really have it as a primary option. I wouldn't actually go ahead and start leveling up your advance to just boost your Legion. Definitely just leave that for capacity if you did want to actually spam your Legion over and over again. But anyway, that pretty much concludes it for this one. If I did miss anything, just let me know down in the comments if you have your own findings. We'll just discuss that there, but I feel like I did cover almost everything. As always, please do like and subscribe, because I will have some more Lies of P videos coming along the way. And do follow me on Twitch, because I will be playing there. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop in, give me a follow as well. But yeah, see you guys in the next one. Bye.